Hi, this is Brisley from thirstgym.com. Today we're going to talk about how to set up the max effort lower training of the Conjugate system. Now this is kind of the first part in a several part series. So if you want to see the max effort upper, dynamic effort lower, and dynamic effort upper, those will be coming after this video. And once they're all concluded, I'll have them linked in the description box below so you can find them if you happen to stumble upon this one before those other three. Now, the max effort lower part of the Conjugate system, very popularized by Louis Simmons, is going to be taking heavy lower body lifts for the day. And so usually this is going to be a squat or a deadlift variation. Now this is going to be my spin on what I do when I program max effort lower. So if you're looking for the West Side system that Louis used with his guys, I would just read his book, go find his content, follow West Side Barbell on social media, and you'll get how they do things. This is the adaptations that I've made through the times that I've used the system and with the lifters that I use to have good results with more raw lifters than equipped, but it doesn't mean that you can't take something away from this and use it for your own training. So again, this is just my interpretation of what I've done. So being the max effort lower, the first thing I want to clarify here is that I have moved to where this is basically max effort squat day. I've got to the point to where this is almost always going to be a squat variation. Now you might ask, why am I doing that? Well, from what I've found through the raw population and through my own training is that recovering from the squat is easier than recovering from the deadlift. And so therefore I like to have heavy deadlifts less frequently in my programming and actually be able to touch them on a dynamic effort day rather than the max effort day. And I'll describe that more in the dynamic effort video that I'm going to make in the future. But for today, we're just going to talk about the squat. They're always going to be doing some kind of squat variation on this day. Now, the reason I'm going to bring this up is because it's going to kind of dictate where we go with our programming, okay? So after you've got all your warm-ups and stuff done, I'm going to denote these all by different letters and how I do my own programming. But the A1 variation, so the big thing you're going to do is going to be your squat variation of the day. Now, I personally like using not 1-rep maxes or basically 1-rep maxes with RPE caps. So the first thing I like to do with several people is I actually like to work this up to a 3RM, especially early on. And now you might say, well, why a 3-rep max? Well, if we leave, we'll just say this is going to be an RPE of 9 to 9.5. Okay, now, and the reason I do this, basically I'm leaving a little bit in the tank, especially if this is early on in a training cycle. You know, we're not 6-8 months into training with this system. I want to leave a little bit in the tank. Now, if you know anything about 3-rep training maxes, that's usually going to be in the 92.5% range, give or take. Okay, this can change from lifter to lifter, but essentially this is going to be 90 to 92.5%, which one of the main things we want to do in the max effort system is make sure that we're touching 90% plus on this day, which with this right here, we will check that box. Okay, we're going to check that box right here. Now, this is going to be hard, but with raw lifters, the reason I like this is because the time under tension is actually going to increase based upon what we're going to do. So if you only take 1 rep, you're not going to have a whole lot of tension, time under tension in terms of muscular size. You definitely will when you're grinding, but you're going to have more tension on the tissues, which is then going to let you stimulate more strength in the tissues that you need. So that's going to probably be your quads, your glutes, and your hamstrings, and your squat variations. So the first thing I like to do is make this a 3-rep max, okay? So that would be step 1. And again, these RPEs can vary. When people start early on, I'll actually have them more in that 8 to 8.5 range of the RPE as we start at maybe a week 1 of the training. But as we progress over to say week 12, this is definitely gonna be more to the 9.5, maybe even a 10 if we're actually trying to prep for a meet and something like that, okay? So the big thing here, we're gonna take a squat variation for a 3-rep max at around an RPE 9 to 9.5, okay? Now, the next thing that we're gonna do here, okay, I'm actually gonna write that back up there. I shouldn't have deleted that quite yet. So as our squat variation is going to actually have, so we'll say a 3RM, and we'll just say at 9 just for today's purposes. Then what I actually like to do is hit back down sets So we're gonna hit some back downs, and I know this is gonna be not as popular in the conjugate system, but if this squat variation is actually something you need to work on, then getting more reps and practice with this variation is only going to help you if this exercise is selected correctly. So usually what I like to do is I usually like to pick 2 to 3 sets at the absolute most. I'd never go over 3. 2 to 3 sets, and then this is usually gonna be anywhere from the 2 to 5 reps. And then we're gonna make sure that we leave about 2 reps in reserve. Okay, so kind of similar to RPE. This would probably, if you take this down to RPE, this is actually probably gonna be about an 8 to a 9, depending upon how you squat and how this drains you. Now, I have written several articles about how I also like to use the APRE method. Oops, sorry, my handwriting is atrocious. I like to actually use the APRE method, and I actually use an APRE3, and this is popularized by Brian Mann. You can find my articles on Elite FTS with this, and essentially this would actually have you taking 2 sets, and you're gonna be probably in this range more cases than not. The goal is gonna be to aim for 3 reps per set. You could get 2, you could get 4, you could get 6. It depends on how much you left in the tank on this main variation. So to round this out very quickly, to make this very, very simple for you to understand, if you want to implement something today, I would say do your 3 RM plus 2 back downs at RPE 8. Okay, so that's going to give you 3 total sets, working sets anyways, and you're going to have 1 working set at 90%, and then you're going to have 2 working sets that are probably actually going to be in that mid to high 80, probably 3 to 87%, depending upon how you back down, and that's going to get you a lot of good quality reps here. Okay, so if you're going to look at this, you're now going to have 3 reps here, plus we'll just say on average of 3, so that's going to be plus 6, so you're going to have 9 actual set reps at around 85% or more. Okay, so that's going to be really good quality reps at a high percentage of a 1 rep max. That's going to drive a lot of strength for your squat. Okay, now the second part, whatever the squat variation was that you suck at, we're just going to say it's an SSB box squat, and we're just going to say that you suck at being in the bottom of the squat. Very popular with raw lifters. So the next thing that we're going to do, so I'm going to leave that up here so you can kind of see where our programming is going. The next thing we're going to now do is go to so I use the safety bar. I like to try to keep things a little bit simple if I can, especially for intermediate lifters, to not have to choose a whole bunch of stuff. We're now going to go with an SSB pause squat. Okay, and now this is our primary supplemental exercise. Okay, so this is now our supplemental exercise, and again, the whole point of this is to drive up this exercise, the safety bar box squat. Okay, now what you're going to do here can vary quite a bit. If you're getting ready for a meet, I would keep the reps on the lower end and really push this. If we're farther out, I might actually make sure I drop my reps down. So again, we're going to kind of start earlier on if you're just kind of getting into the system. Here I would use anywhere from 1 to 3 sets of 3 to 8 reps, and it's a pretty big range, but I'm gonna be honest with you, more than likely this is gonna be 3 to 5 reps in more cases than not. The only reason I'm gonna go 6 to 8 is if we need to drive hypertrophy. If this lifter is highly undersized or needs to build mass, then I'm going to go to that 6 to 8 range. If their size is relatively decent, I'm going to keep things more in that 3 to 5 range to continue to drive the strength adaptations. And usually these are also going to be at RPE 7 to 8. And again, this all depends on where you're at your training cycle. Early on, it'll be more in that 7. Later on in the training cycle, you're probably going to be pushing more towards that 8. And again, 1 to 3 sets of anywhere from here. So for this example, if we already did our 3 RM, and then we did 2 sets of 3 at 8 for our back downs, okay, that's what we're gonna be here. So going to my next exercise here with the pause squat, we're gonna keep this in mind. So now I'm gonna say SSB pause squat, and now I'm gonna say 2 by 5 at RPE 7, okay? So I've got my first 2 exercises out of the way. This lifter is not strong in the bottom for this example, okay? So we're kind of building our program out now. So now we've got our A's and we've got our B's checked. Next is gonna be C. And so what I like to do for my C's is then pick a heavy single leg exercise or a heavy quad dominant exercise for the raw lifter in more cases than not. So this can be pretty variable depending on what you have. So I'm gonna list some different exercises first. That could be a heavy goblet squat. That could be a leg press. That could be, this also could be a hack squat. Okay, and this can even be single leg exercises. So this could be like your Bulgarian split squats, your front foot elevated. This could be, you know, a SSB lunge of any kind. Okay, this could be anything that's going to help the athlete in a squat-based pattern because we're working on the squat and we know we're not strong on the bottom. So looking at this, if I know that my athlete's not strong at the bottom, my kind of default exercise to now go to is then going to be a front foot elevated goblet split squat, okay? Now, pretty standard here, I pick 3 to 4 sets. I usually start with 3, and so usually it's gonna be 3 by anywhere from 6 to 12 reps. And essentially, again, my reps are gonna be kind of determined upon what my athlete needs. If they're undersized, I'm gonna go more for that 10 to 12 to try to build some tissue. If they're already good, I'm gonna drift towards that lower end, probably more like the 6 to 8. So with this athlete, we're kind of in the middle. So just to make things simple, we're just gonna say we're gonna go with 3 by 8 per side on our split squats, okay? So we'll put that here at our next thing, FFE goblet split squat, and we're doing 3 by 8 per side, okay? And again, leave 1 to 2 reps in the tank on your accessory work. So that's C. Now we've got D. Okay, now this is gonna be an isolation-based exercise or a single leg exercise on the squat day. Since I use a single leg exercise here, I don't really have to check that box. I've already checked it. So I'm gonna go to more of an accessory-based exercise. Again, for my raw lifters, I usually am gonna make this pretty quad dominant. Not always, I just gotta kind of see what's going on. But this could now start to be something like a leg extension. This could be a sissy squat. This could be a Spanish squat. This could even be a reverse sled drag. This could be, I'm trying to think of some other, you know, good quad-based exercises. These are kind of like my go-to that you could use. If you really wanted to, you could even make this a goblet squat of any kind as well. So you kind of got some options here. We're gonna say, based upon the way this is going, we're using a safety bar, they're weak in the bottom. I'm gonna go on a limb here, and we're actually gonna make a heels elevated goblet squat, okay? So we're gonna say a heels elevated goblet squat, and again, probably 2 to 3 sets, maybe 4 at the absolute most, but we're gonna try to really drive some sarcoplasmic hypertrophy here. So we're gonna say 3 by 15. Ideally, this could be anywhere to 10 to 20 in the rep ranges that I'm kind of looking at for my D categories and my exercise for my max effort lower. And again, this is gonna help drive that. So that's gonna go next in line for my exercise here. So heels elevated, goblet squat, and we're gonna say we're doing 3 by 15, okay? So that leaves me with my last kind of box that I like to check here, which is my E. Sorry, I've not checked it yet. My E's. And what I actually usually do here is I usually pick 2 exercises, okay? Makes it good and easy. So my squat day, I'm usually looking at an E1 and an E2, okay? Now I can tell you the E2 is almost always gonna be abs for me, and that can kind of be really dictate on what you want here. Usually on the squat day, I usually like to pick a flexion-based activity, okay? So that would be something like hanging leg raises. This could be a reverse crunch, especially if somebody's super tight. This could be standing abs. Standing abs. Anything of that nature. Those are kind of like the big three. You could even go with different sit-up variations to kind of check that box too. And another one I really like to give athletes that are poor movers, need some hip work. I even like doing half TGUs here sometimes to really get sure they're moving well about their hips. So you got a couple different options here. And this is usually going to be 3 to 5 sets. 5 is a lot. It's like off season, we need to get some shape, but 3 to 5 sets, and depending on what we got going on here, it could be max, but usually it's probably gonna be 10 to 20 reps is kind of what we're kind of aiming for here. Okay, that's really easy to check for most people. The next is gonna be down here, your E1, and this I usually try to make a glute and hamstring exercise. And this usually ends up being things like a reverse hyper. This could be a back extension. This could be back extension. This could be, you could even do leg curls here. I don't give it a whole lot, but it could certainly be leg curls, especially if we've got some kind of knee issues. This could be pull throughs. And this could even be, if we need, like, again, we're trying to drive hypertrophy, this could even be different RDL variations, okay? Now I know that's a lot to kind of put on one big thing here. Hopefully you can read my terrible handwriting, but essentially you're going for the posterior chain here. Okay, that's kind of what you're trying to drive here, because we've done so much anterior work of the squat, and these are all obviously very squat, very heavy exercises. Still need to train the posterior chain, so we're gonna make sure that we do that here. And usually for these, I'm gonna kind of delete these or erase them just so you can see what I'm gonna do here. But again, I kind of superset that here. So again, probably 3 to 5 sets of about 10 to 20 reps. Again, kind of let your reps dictate what you need. If you need more size, then you can actually keep these down in like that more hypertrophy range of like 10 to 12. If you're really trying to go for more for recovery, just get some quality blood flow work, then you're gonna push those more towards the 20. Okay, so now that we've actually got our training session laid out of what we're doing, we're gonna kind of do a quick recap here of what we did. So our first exercise was the safety squat bar box squat, and we're gonna do a heavy set of 3 for my particular programming here. But again, big thing to know here, 1 to 3 rep max, maybe a little bit left in the tank, and anywhere from 1 to 3 back downs. And we've got 2 sets of 3 here at RP8. So we're gonna be touching plenty of weights at 85% plus, which is gonna help drive that strength adaptation for where we need addressed at, which in this example is gonna be in the bottom for this particular lifter. And then we're gonna continue to address the upper back work with the safety squat bar and working on pauses in the bottom. We're just gonna do 2 sets of 5 RP7. We're gonna say that this is earlier on in a training cycle, okay? We're not approaching a meet. We're just really trying to hammer home what we need to do here for this particular session to get our squat going in the right direction. Then we've got our next accessory exercise. I really like to keep single leg work in all my lower body training sessions. I think it's good for low back health and hip health. I really didn't touch about that whenever I pick this exercise, but usually whenever I'm laying out a training session like this, somewhere in here, I like to put a single leg exercise in, okay? That could be a single leg back extension, that could be a single leg RDL, that could be a goblet split squat, Bulgarian split squat, could be walking lunges, lateral lunges. That's ultimately up to you depending on what you need, but just know that's a box that I try to check in these training sessions. Next, we've got the heels elevated goblet squat for 3 sets of 15. And again, we're trying to maintain tension in our quads here, drive hypertrophy, train in that range of motion deep in the squat, since that's where we're saying that this lifter is not strong at. And then we're kind of looking at some extra posterior chain work and ab work that's gonna just help keep the midsection strong, keep the hips feeling good, keep the glutes and the hamstrings strong, and overall drive some extra hypertrophy and recovery through the midsection and the trunk. So that's gonna come from the abdominal work as well. And I've got here, we're gonna go probably 10 to 20 reps. I program them for max for most people. If you're getting more than 20 reps, then you start to add some weight, make these harder, slow down tempos. You can do all that kind of stuff. So the big thing that you need to take away from this session is that you really only need, I like using ease letters. I usually like to stop at my ease for most of my max effort work, for most of my lifters. And the one big thing that I get asked probably the most about my training sessions is, well, where's the upper back work that Westside and Louis say that you need to do 4 days a week or what have you? Quite honestly, especially for like a lifter like this, or if I'm doing something with a lifter, I'm thinking about back position from the squat. I try to go with a lot of anterior loaded stuff. So you'll notice safety squat bar is going to help the upper back position. Goblet positions are going to do that as well. That loads anterior is going to keep us more vertical. The back's going to have to be statically strong. And then again, pull throughs are going to hit the lower back. You can do reverse hypers. If back work is really, really important to you, then by all means, you could even just put in a third exercise here and just put in some lat pull downs, just to be on the lighter side for 2 to 3 sets of, again, 10 to 20 reps. And you can check that box with merely adding 2 to 3 minutes of time to your training session. So I would just leave it down here. It's not as an important area. And the other thing to notice here with this training session is that the bottom part of the training session drives the one above it. So my E's are driving my D's, my D is driving my C's are driving my B's, and my B is driving my A's. Ultimately, the fish should then drive my max effort squat for the day, and we'll have what we need from this max effort lower training session. So hopefully this video helps you out with the max effort lower system for how I program for athletes and lifters in powerlifting. This isn't too overly complicated. At the end of the day, if you take the sets, reps, and ideas that I've kind of laid out here, plug and chug the exercises that you need for your squat in this particular instance, and you run this as a max effort session. Obviously, you're going to have to adapt the sessions over time, which I can talk about in a future video, but this at least gives you a template that you can use every single time you walk into the gym to squat, with a methodical reason of why you're picking exercises, what you're doing. You can get in and out. Again, this training session should take no more than 90 to maybe 120 minutes at the most, so an hour and a half to 2 hours at the absolute most to be able to get through this, especially once you get down to these accessory exercises. You're going to find it moves pretty quick. It's these first 2 exercises, your squat movements, that are obviously going to eat up most of your time. And as you know, with like the 80-20 rule, you want 80% of your results coming from the 20% of the work that you do, which would be these 2 right here, right? So this is going to check that 80-20 rule. And if you had to skip out or shorten anything or cut some reps, or you're short in time or just not feeling it that day, you know where you kind of need to try to pull your workload from your training session very easily, but still get some good quality results if you need to. So again, this is how I lay out my max effort lower days for the athletes and lifters that I work with. If you got any questions regarding the system, max effort lower training, why I chose what I chose or how I choose it, please let me know in the comment section below. I'd be more than happy to help you out. Again, make sure you check back next week, where I'm going to cover the max effort upper aspect of the Conjugate system, and we're going to break down a bench session just like I did here with the squat. So hopefully we can help you with your max effort training. If you got any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Thanks. Have a great day.